Hey, it's me, Andy B, the Dizzy Busy PT, speaking out for all those who are too busy to be dizzy, and that is all of us. I know, I just went through it myself again. That makes my 5th time. It's absolutely miserable, but I just wanted to come back and make a video. I had a viewer ask, what does the thyroid have to do with people not getting better from their dizziness? And so I want to answer that in a few different ways, but before I do, I just want to say thank you to all of you who are subscribers, who are watching my videos, who are commenting. It's so encouraging to see how many people are getting help from these videos. So I decided I want to keep making these things and keep trying to help, keep building our community. Just a reminder, if you're not a patient of mine, I'm so glad that you're listening to these videos, but please make sure you talk to your healthcare providers about what we talk about in these, because dizziness is extremely complex and it doesn't apply to everything to everybody with what we say. Yeah. Let's get back to the question. Thyroid, what does that have to do with why people may not get better from their dizziness? Well, it depends on the cause of dizziness, okay? But what I see in the clinic is people often get stuck in the vicious cycle of dizziness, or their primary cause of dizziness doesn't get better. So why does that happen? Um, let's go back to the analogy of the tornado that goes through a town, okay? If you have a tornado coming through a town, the thing to do when the tornado is in the town is get into the basement. We call that red light dizziness. We found that vertigo often happens in 2 phases. The intense spin phase we call red light dizziness. That is when you want to stop moving, you want to just survive. That's when you want to be careful. You want to not vomit. You want to let the intense spinning stop. You have to find out why you're spinning. We call that red light dizziness. And then the green light dizziness is like when the tornado leaves the town and you come up out of the basement and you see what damage has been done. You can maybe see the tornado way off in the distance, but now you come out, you see what damage has been done, and now it's time to clean up the mess. That is green light dizziness. So the thyroid can affect both red and green light dizziness. So when there's a thyroid issue, we see associations in a few different ways. We see the thyroid's impact on the nerves. We see the thyroid's impact on the nervous system. And we see the thyroid's impact on our ability to sleep. And we see the thyroid's impact on the actual vestibular system itself. So I want to try to touch on those very briefly here, just to wet your whistle a little bit so you understand where we're going. So the first thing is the nerves. So if I want you to imagine a speedometer or a GPS system in your car, it kind of tells you where you are and how fast you're going. I love to tell the story of when I was 16 years old. My dad bought me this GMC. Well, he didn't buy it for me. He had it for quite some time. He had a GMC Sierra pickup truck, 3/4 ton, 3-speed. It was awesome, okay? Huge, really cool truck, sliding back window, very neat. And it was extremely rusty, okay? So it needed a lot of work. Well, my cousin Jerry rebuilt trucks. So my dad took our truck to my cousin. He rebuilds the truck, brings it back. It's all beautiful black. It's awesome. We get in to drive it, and there's only one problem. The speedometer does not work, okay? So my dad told me, Andy, you're welcome to drive this truck. You can have it. You can use it. But if you get a speeding ticket, you cannot drive anymore because we won't be able to afford the insurance. So I had to figure out how to know how fast I was driving, even if I didn't know what the speedometer said, because the speedometer didn't work. So I'm watching the bug reflector, on the front. It was one of those old school bug reflectors with the big, thick part that just sticks straight up from the hood. It wasn't aerodynamic at all. And the faster you'd go, the more that bug reflector would bend down. Or I would watch my peripheral vision and kind of get an idea of how fast I was going based on how fast it looked like I was going. I could go by feel. I remember I'd hear the engine rev, and depending on how high the engine was revving, I knew how fast I was going. So the point is, the truck worked, but the speedometer did not work. And the thyroid is one of those systems that impacts how our body perceives motion. So oftentimes our inner ear can tell us that we're moving more than we should or not enough. or tell us that we're moving less than we should be moving. And that will impact how our body agrees with what we see. So that's one example of how the thyroid might impact our ability to feel movement. People who have peripheral neuropathies know what I'm talking about. Their feet are either numb or dull, or they're hypersensitive. And that's horrible. It really messes up people's balance. So as we're trying to compensate for different inner ear problems, that is a reason why we can kind of struggle if that thyroid's not quite right. The other thing the nervous system relies on is the thyroid. So the nervous system, it is a modulator. And if the thyroid is heightened, our nervous system can be heightened. Or if the thyroid is hypo, our nervous system can be kind of dull. I think of it like driving my car down the highway. If I've got the pedal to the metal going 120 miles an hour, I'm flying through traffic. That's kind of running hot. That's how our nervous system can be if we're hyperthyroid, if we're in a hyperthyroid state. Or I could not be staying up with traffic, just going 35 miles an hour, like pulling a camper that, is blowing all over the place, just trying to make it there. That is similar to hypothyroidism. So thyroid affects our nervous system. It affects our nerves. The other thing that the thyroid can do is affect our sleep. One big thing we ask our patients is, are you rehab ready? If you're not rehab ready, the brain can't habituate. If that tornado is still coming through the town, if you're in red light dizziness and we aren't stable, it's very hard for the brain to compensate for the dysfunction that occurred that was caused by the inner ear problem. So if you're not rehab ready, we look and say, why? If that thyroid is hyper or hypo, the nervous system isn't working right, the nerves aren't firing right, we've got to try to get that stabilized. And that will impact sleep. Sleep is when we heal. So if my patients aren't sleeping well, they're doing all the right things, they're working really hard, but their sleep is horrible, it's going to be very hard for them, my patients, to get better. All this has to do with the thyroid. Finally, we find that people who have autoimmune related thyroid disease tend to have more vestibular disorders, more problems from a vestibular perspective. So we know there's a correlation with people who have a thyroid problem that isn't right and people not getting better from dizziness. Now, what I usually find is that doctors do a great job of checking thyroid stimulating hormone levels. So patients usually are being well managed, but there are some that are hard to manage. It's difficult, or maybe they're just finding that they do have a thyroid problem. So I hope that helps. I hope you're able to hear this information, take it, use it, talk to your doctors about it, your healthcare providers, and let's keep working together so you can go and spin no more.